In April 1945, an American military photographer entered the newly liberated Buchenwald concentration camp in Germany and captured thousands of images, documenting the horrors found there. Among them was one photograph that seemed, at first glance, almost mundane compared to the surrounding devastation. It showed a single prisoner sitting alone on the ground outside a barracks, back against a wooden wall, legs stretched out before him, head tilted slightly downward. He appeared to be resting, taking a moment of quiet after liberation. The photograph was filed with thousands of others, catalogued simply as Liberated Prisoner, Buchenwald, April 1945. For 79 years, it remained in military archives, unremarkable among the countless liberation images. But in March 2024, a medical historian examining liberation photographs for a research project on concentration camp survival noticed something in this image that changed everything. The prisoner's posture wasn't rest. The position of his legs wasn't natural. And when she consulted with physicians who specialized in extreme starvation, they immediately recognized what she was seeing. This man wasn't resting. His body had reached a specific medical state that made standing physically impossible. The photograph documented the precise moment when the human body surrenders to starvation. This is the story of that photograph, that prisoner, and the medical reality it reveals about survival at the absolute edge of human endurance. Let's begin. Buchenwald concentration camp, located near Weimar, Germany, was liberated by American forces on April 11, 1945. The U.S. 6th Armored Division arrived to find approximately 21,000 prisoners still alive in conditions of unimaginable horror. Thousands more had died in the final weeks as the Nazi guards had abandoned the camp, leaving prisoners without food, water, or medical care. U.S. Army photographer Private First Class Harry Miller was assigned to document the liberation for military records and war crimes evidence. His photographs would provide crucial documentation of Nazi atrocities and the condition of survivors. Miller spent 3 days photographing the camp between April 11th and April 14th, 1945. His images captured the emaciated survivors, the piles of corpses, the crematorium facilities, and the arrival of medical personnel attempting to provide emergency care to thousands of critically ill prisoners. Among the hundreds of photographs Miller took was one that seemed almost quiet compared to the surrounding horror. It showed a single man, prisoner number visible on his striped uniform, sitting on bare ground with his back against the wooden exterior wall of a barracks building. His legs were extended straight out before him. His arms rested limply at his sides. His head was tilted slightly downward, face partially visible, eyes appearing to be open but unfocused. The man was extremely emaciated, skeletal, with visible bones through paper-thin skin. His striped prisoner uniform hung loosely on a frame that appeared to weigh perhaps 70 or 80 pounds. But compared to many of the other prisoners Miller photographed, this man didn't look markedly worse. Emaciation was universal at Buchenwald. Miller's field notes, written on the back of the photograph, read, "Prisoner outside barracks, Block 58, unable to stand. Appeared conscious but unresponsive to questions. Medics notified. Photo taken approximately 1300 hours, April 12, 1945. The notation, unable to stand, was significant, but didn't seem unusual given the condition of most prisoners. Thousands of Buchenwald survivors were too weak to walk and had to be carried to medical facilities. The photograph was processed, catalogued, and filed in the National Archives, with thousands of other liberation images. It was assigned the catalog number Signal Corps Photograph 204-SCP-12847 and stored in boxes containing Buchenwald documentation. For 79 years, the photograph remained in the archives, occasionally viewed by researchers studying the Holocaust or concentration camp conditions, but never receiving particular attention. It was simply one of many images showing the devastating physical condition of camp survivors. In March 2024, Dr. Sarah Brennan, a medical historian at Johns Hopkins University specializing in the physiology of extreme starvation, was researching concentration camp survivor medical records for a book on liberation medicine. The emergency medical care provided to camp survivors in April and May 1945. Dr. Brennan was examining liberation photographs while cross-referencing them with medical reports filed by U.S. Army physicians who had treated Buchenwald survivors. She was trying to match specific medical conditions mentioned in reports with visual evidence in photographs. When she came across Miller's photograph of the sitting prisoner, something about his posture caught her attention. She had spent years studying starvation physiology and had seen hundreds of images of severely malnourished people. But this particular posture, the specific way the legs were extended, the position of the arms, the angle of the head, triggered recognition. She immediately called Dr. Michael Torres, a physician who specialized in treating severe malnutrition in famine regions and who had consulted on her research. She sent him the photograph and asked, "What do you see here?" His response came within minutes. "That's not rest. That's sarcopenia with probable rhabdomyolysis." This person has lost so much muscle mass that his legs can no longer support his body weight. He's not sitting by choice. He physically cannot stand. Dr. Brennan realized she was looking at something she had read about in medical literature, but had never seen clearly documented in a photograph. The specific moment when the human body learns the physical ability to stand upright. Dr. Brennan contacted Dr. Torres and asked him to provide a detailed medical analysis of what the photograph showed. As a physician with extensive experience treating severe acute malnutrition, Dr. Torres could identify specific physiological markers that revealed the prisoner's medical condition. "When you look at this photograph with medical knowledge," Dr. Torres explained, "you're not seeing someone who chose to sit down. You're seeing someone whose body has reached a specific threshold of muscle wasting where standing is physically impossible." Dr. Torres walked Dr. Brennan through the medical indicators visible in the photograph. The prisoner's legs were extended straight out, not bent at the knees. "That's significant," Dr. Torres explained. "When someone voluntarily sits to rest, they typically bend their knees, either crossed or pulled up. Straight leg extension like this suggests he lacks the muscle strength to bend his legs or to pull them into a more comfortable position." The prisoner's arms hung limply at his sides, rather than being used to support his torso or positioned more comfortably. He's not using his arms to prop himself up because he likely lacks the strength to do so. The muscle wasting has progressed to the point where even basic positional movements require energy he doesn't have. Most tellingly, the prisoner's head was tilted forward rather than upright. Holding your head upright requires neck muscles. When those muscles waste away, the head begins to droop. It's one of the late-stage signs of extreme sarcopenia, muscle wasting. Dr. Torres explained the physiological progression. The human body requires approximately 1,200 to 1,500 calories per day just for basic metabolic function, breathing, heartbeat, maintaining body temperature. When caloric intake drops below that threshold for extended periods, The body begins consuming its own tissue for energy. It starts with fat stores, then moves to muscle tissue. The body tries to preserve essential organs and core muscles as long as possible, so skeletal muscles in the limbs are consumed first. At Buchenwald, prisoners were receiving approximately 700 to 1,000 calories per day in the final year of the war, and even less in the final months as German infrastructure collapsed. At that caloric deficit, doing any physical labor, which prisoners were forced to do, accelerates muscle consumption. A person can lose 50 to 60% of their muscle mass over months of severe starvation. Dr. Torres continued, when muscle mass drops below a certain threshold, the body simply cannot generate enough force to perform basic movements. Standing requires coordinated contraction of leg muscles, core muscles, and back muscles. When those muscles have wasted to the point where they can't generate sufficient force, standing becomes impossible. You literally cannot hold your own body weight upright. The medical term for this condition is starvation sarcopenia with functional disability. In modern famine medicine, it's considered a critical indicator that death is imminent without immediate medical intervention. Looking at this photograph, Dr. Torres said, I would estimate this man has lost 65 to 70% of his normal muscle mass. His body weight is probably 35 to 40% of what it should be. At this stage, even if you provide food, the prognosis is very poor. The body has consumed so much muscle tissue, including heart muscle, that organ failure is likely even with treatment. Dr. Brennan asked the crucial question, how long would someone survive in this condition without intervention? Dr. Torres paused before answering. Days, maybe a week. His body is in the final stage of starvation. Every system is failing. He's sitting on the ground because he physically cannot stand, and soon he won't be able to sit upright either. Without immediate medical intervention, and even with it, he's dying. The photograph wasn't documenting rest. It was documenting the final stage of death by starvation. Dr. Brennan knew she needed to identify the prisoner in the photograph if possible. She wanted to know if he had survived, and if so, what medical treatment had saved him. If he had died, she wanted to document his story properly. She began by examining the photograph at high resolution to identify any information that might help. The prisoner's uniform showed a number partially visible on the chest. She could make out what appeared to be 57, followed by other digits that were unclear due to the angle and condition of the uniform. She contacted the Buchenwald Memorial Archives in Germany, which maintains detailed records of prisoners, including registration numbers, arrival dates, and, where known, fates. She explained her research and sent the photograph, asking if the visible number or the notation Block 58 from Miller's field notes could help identify the prisoner. The archivist, Klaus Hermann, responded within a week. Block 58 at Buchenwald housed primarily Polish and Soviet prisoners in April 1945. The partial number visible in the photograph, 57, is consistent with a series of numbers assigned to a transport of Polish prisoners who arrived at Buchenwald in early 1944 from Auschwitz. I have cross-referenced this with our liberation medical records. Hermann had located a U.S. Army medical report dated April 12, 1945, the same day Miller took the photograph, that documented emergency treatment provided to prisoners found in and around Block 58. One entry matched the photograph's subject. Patient: prisoner number 57,341. Name: Tadeusz Kowalski. Age: 34. Nationality: Polish. Found sitting outside Block 58, unable to stand. Extreme emaciation, estimated weight 38 kilograms, 84 pounds. Height estimated 175 centimeters, 5 feet 9 inches. Diagnosis: severe starvation, advanced sarcopenia, dehydration, possible tuberculosis. Patient conscious but minimally responsive. Pulse weak and irregular. Body temperature 35.2 degrees Celsius, 95.4 degrees Fahrenheit, indicating hypothermia. Prognosis: grave. Patient transported to field hospital for emergency treatment. Recommendation: intravenous fluids, gradual refeeding protocol, warmth, observation for refeeding syndrome. Dr. Brennan now had a name: Tadeusz Kowalski, a 34-year-old Polish prisoner. But had he survived? Herman provided additional documentation. Kowalski's medical records show he was treated at the field hospital established at Buchenwald from April 12th through May 20th, 1945. His treatment was complicated by refeeding syndrome, a dangerous condition that occurs when severely starved people receive nutrition too quickly, causing potentially fatal electrolyte imbalances. The records showed Kowalski had initially been given only clear liquids and very small amounts of easily digestible food. Over weeks, his caloric intake was gradually increased as his body slowly began to rebuild. He experienced multiple medical crises, including heart arrhythmias and kidney problems, both complications of prolonged starvation. But remarkably, Tadeusz Kowalski survived. Medical records showed he was transferred to a displaced persons hospital in June 1945, then to a recovery facility in Switzerland in August 1945. By December 1945, he had regained enough strength to be repatriated to Poland. Dr. Brennan found one more document, a Red Cross tracing service record from 1947, showing that Kowalski had registered with authorities trying to locate surviving family members. The record listed him as residing in Kraków, Poland, working as a carpenter. The question now was, had Kowalski survived long-term? And were there any surviving family members who could provide his perspective on that photograph and his liberation? Dr. Brennan contacted the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw and the Polish Red Cross, asking for assistance in tracing Tadeusz Kowalski or his descendants. She provided the information she had: his name, approximate age, his presence at Buchenwald, and his post-war residence in Kraków. Within 3 weeks, she received a response from a genealogical researcher in Poland named Anna Nowak, who had been contacted by the Red Cross. I believe I have located Tadeusz Kowalski's family. Mr. Kowalski survived until 1982, dying at age 71. He married in 1948 and had 2 children. His daughter, Maria Kowalski Adamczyk, age 74, is still living in Kraków. I have contacted her on your behalf, and she is willing to speak with you. Dr. Brennan arranged a video call with Maria Kowalski Adamczyk in April 2024, 79 years after her father's liberation. Maria spoke English well and was eager to discuss her father's experience. My father rarely spoke about Buchenwald, Maria explained. He was there for 14 months, from February 1944 until liberation in April 1945. He had been sent there from Auschwitz, where he had been imprisoned for resistance activities. He was a member of the Polish underground before his arrest in 1943. Dr. Brennan showed Maria the photograph of her father sitting against the barracks wall. Maria was silent for a long moment, tears visible in her eyes. I have never seen this photograph, she said quietly. My father told us he was very close to death when the Americans arrived. He said he could not walk, could not stand. He said he remembers sitting outside the barracks because the smell inside was unbearable. So many men dying. He sat there and waited, not knowing if he would be found alive or if he would die there. Maria continued. He told me that an American soldier found him and called for medics. He said he tried to thank them, but couldn't speak. He had no strength, even for words. He was taken to a hospital, and he said the doctors told him later that he was perhaps 1 or 2 days from death. His heart was failing. His kidneys were shutting down. If liberation had come even 3 days later, he would not have survived. Dr. Brennan explained the medical analysis, that the photograph showed Tadeusz at the specific moment when his body could no longer support standing, when muscle wasting had progressed to the point of functional disability. That makes sense, Maria said. He told me he could not walk for almost 2 months after liberation. Even after treatment started, even after he began eating again, his muscles had wasted so much that he had to relearn how to walk. He described it as being like an infant. First he could sit up, then he could stand with support, then finally he could take steps. It took months to rebuild what starvation had destroyed. Maria shared more about her father's post-war life. He returned to Poland in late 1945. He was devastated to learn that his entire family, parents, 2 sisters, their children, had all been killed. Some at Auschwitz, others in executions. He was the only survivor of his family. He married my mother in 1948. She was also a camp survivor from Ravensbrück. They understood each other's trauma in a way that others couldn't. They had 2 children, myself and my brother. My father worked as a carpenter and lived a quiet life. He suffered from nightmares and health problems related to his imprisonment for the rest of his life, but he was determined to live fully, to honor those who didn't survive. Tadeusz Kowalski died in 1982 from heart failure, a condition his doctors attributed partially to the permanent damage caused by prolonged starvation 40 years earlier. Dr. Brennan completed her research and prepared a comprehensive medical analysis of the photograph and Tadeusz Kowalski's case. She presented her findings at the annual Holocaust and Genocide Studies Conference in May 2024. Her presentation, titled The Physiology of Survival, Medical Evidence in Liberation Photography, used Kowalski's photograph as a case study to explain the specific medical conditions affecting concentration camp survivors at liberation. This photograph documents a specific medical state that we call starvation sarcopenia with functional disability, Dr. Brennan explained. Mr. Kowalski had lost approximately 65% of his muscle mass. His body weight was 38 kilograms, 84 pounds, for a man who should have weighed approximately 75 to 80 kilograms. He was sitting on the ground not by choice, but because his leg muscles could no longer generate sufficient force to lift and support his body weight. Dr. Brennan explained the broader medical context. When Allied forces liberated concentration camps in 1945, they encountered thousands of people in various stages of starvation. Medical personnel were often unprepared for the complexity of treating extreme malnutrition. Many survivors died even after liberation because well-meaning medics fed them too much too quickly, causing refeeding syndrome. Mr. Kowalski survived because the medical personnel who treated him understood the need for gradual refeeding and careful monitoring. The medical records from Buchenwald liberation provided crucial data about survival rates. Of the approximately 21,000 prisoners found alive at Buchenwald on April 11, 1945, nearly 1,000 died in the following weeks, despite medical treatment. They were simply too far gone. The fact that Mr. Kowalski survived from the condition shown in this photograph is remarkable and testament to both the quality of medical care he received and his own physiological resilience. Dr. Brennan's research had broader implications for modern famine medicine. The physiological progression documented in camp liberation records, the specific stages of muscle wasting, organ failure, and functional disability, has informed how we treat severe acute malnutrition in famine situations today. The protocols developed by Allied medical personnel in 1945 became the foundation for modern therapeutic feeding programs. She concluded her presentation with Kowalski's story. Tadeusz Kowalski survived Buchenwald, rebuilt his body and his life, raised a family, and lived 37 years after liberation. But he carried the physical and psychological scars for the rest of his life. This photograph documents the absolute nadir of his experience, the moment when his body had been pushed to the very edge of what human physiology can endure and survive. Understanding what we're seeing in this image, the specific medical reality it documents, helps us comprehend not just the mechanics of starvation, but the full scope of what concentration camp prisoners endured and somehow survived. Dr. Brennan published her findings in the Journal of Holocaust Studies in June 2024. The article included the photograph, the full medical analysis, Tadeusz Kowalski's medical records, and interviews with his daughter Maria. The photograph is now part of a permanent exhibition at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C., displayed with full medical context, explaining what it shows. The caption reads, Tadeusz Kowalski, age 34, photographed at Buchenwald concentration camp on April 12, 1945. One day after liberation, Mr. Kowalski was unable to stand due to severe muscle wasting caused by prolonged starvation. This photograph documents the specific moment when the human body loses the physical ability to support its own weight, the final stage before death from starvation. With medical treatment, Mr. Kowalski survived, eventually regaining his health and living until 1982. His survival stands as testimony to human resilience and the life-saving importance of proper medical intervention for starvation victims. Next to the photograph hangs a picture of Tadeusz Kowalski from 1950, showing him healthy and smiling with his wife and young daughter, proof that even from the brink of death, recovery and life were possible. This is Tadeusz Kowalski's story. And now you know the truth behind that photograph from 1945. Not a moment of rest, but a moment when the human body reached the absolute limit of endurance and somehow, miraculously, survived.